You guys, I cannot believe that this just I just can't believe that this worked. I This literally was just released last week and it already has saved me like a whole week's worth of stress and debugging and not being able to figure something out. I can't gatekeep this at all, so I'm definitely going to share this. I feel like no one is talking about this specific feature or service, and I just started using it, and it's absolutely changing the game for me. So we're going to be talking about this. We're going to talk about AI and prompting, and I'm so excited to be bringing this video to you all. This service just dropped within a week, less than a week, and it's already saved me a whole week's worth of debugging and stress. I needed to upgrade my version of Python for a client project, and I could not figure out for the life of me how to figure this out. I'm going to show you basically what was happening behind the scenes, but by using this one feature that literally just got released by AWS at reInvent last week, I just started using it, and now it has completely changed the game for how I'm thinking about LLMs and AI and prompts and just using machine learning in general. So I'm so excited to share this new service and feature with you all. I think that literally no one is talking about this, and of course I'm not going to gatekeep. I'm going to show you behind the scenes how this works, how I'm using it, and I'm just really excited to make this video for you all. So the background of the story was I just got onboarded onto a project with one of my clients, and it's a Python project, and we are, of course, doing some AI LLM stuff, and I needed to understand how to get a specific version of Python to work, and I have really only been using 3.8 and 3.10. When I'm usually working in the cloud, I'll usually use like the latest models, or I'll just use something that's usually like compatible around 3.8, 3.10, just because those are the ones that are the most usually acceptable ones and ones that usually any platform is just generally supports. Sometimes if you use like the latest, newest version of something, it certain platforms won't have the same features, or certain things will be in beta or in preview, but it won't be as optimized for a new type of implementation or a new version. So I usually have just stayed around like 3.8, 3.10 of Python. So this version needed 3.12, but not 3.12.8, which if you install Python via Homebrew or the latest version, you're going to get 3.12.8. But I needed 3.12.2. And for this specific version of Python, I needed to use PyEnv and to switch out the version. So PyEnv is a utility, and basically what it allows you to do is allows you to, on your machine, switch in different installations of Python. So think like if you have a certain version of iOS, like on your iPhone, right? But you want to then go back to a previous version of that iOS so that you could use a specific app. But then let's say that you're done using that app and you want to go back to using the latest features, you'll then want to use, something else. So then you'll upgrade maybe to a higher version of iOS and back and forth and so on and so forth. So I needed to be able to switch and then basically upgrade my Python version to 3.12.2. Now, by having this, the issue that I ran into was that PyEnv, which was my utility to change out that stuff, usually it works great. I never really have any problems. I was getting this specific version where it was erroring on one of the packages that Homebrew was using to install the new version of Python on my computer. So it was this specific package that I tried upgrading it. I tried removing it and reinstalling it and then upgrading it. I tried to go through all these different ways to install it without throwing errors, see if I can just overwrite it, and nothing was working. And I checked out Stack Overflow, I checked out Reddit, I checked out different blogs, I checked out even different LLMs, and none of the LLMs were able to figure out the specific issue that I was facing. They just said, try these specific implementations or try such and so forth, but nothing was really working. So then I was thinking, like, why am I not using this new service that just got announced last week. I was literally at reInvent and I was like, why am I not thinking about this? So sometimes I'm not necessarily the fastest to adopt a new service or tool, just because I like to see if it works or not, and basically have like the company do the work of testing it, and then once it's ready for production, then it's like, okay, then I can start using it. Because it was in preview, I was a little bit skeptical to actually see if this would be all that it's cracked up to be. Turns out that it's actually lit. It is so powerful. It is so cool. And I think that this whole service is going to absolutely change the game of how we prompt and how we work with these LLMs, because there's so many LLMs now. There's like literally like thousands of LLMs. I was actually asking an LLM how many LLMs there are, and it said like there's about 50 to 100 of the main ones, like the main ones that we would see every day, but then there's like thousands of them that exist because there's different optimizations, there's different ways of fine tuning certain models, so that might be considered something. You could use like QLoRa, or you could use like hyperparameter tuning, and you could then technically have your own LLM. So there's like thousands of these LLMs that are out in the world, right? Out in the environment, out in the ecosystem. And how do we know which one to use? How do we know which one is optimized for our specific tasks? That is a huge question that isn't being answered until now. And I'm really excited to talk about Amazon Bedrock prompt routing, because literally this just got announced literally a week ago. And I was at reInvent, so I was there, and I was a little bit skeptical to like see that it was in preview as opposed to testing it. I used it to help me solve this specific Python issue, and it gave this really, really, really great response. I mean, I had been talking to it for a bit, maybe over a couple of minutes, to kind of explain, get it caught up to speed about what was going on. It gave this kernel of gold that then helped me think about how I can solve this problem. And by going through this specific solution, this actually helped me solve the problem, helped me get unblocked, allowed me to install the version of Python that I needed, and allowed me to proceed and continue the work that I'm doing. So amazing. We love this. We love when AI is just so much smarter than all of us, right? It's just so smart. So amazing to see this work in action, and basically like not have this be like some marketing video or, some sort of like marketing speak. This is like a real thing that I was facing today that was actually really problematic. And I was actually considering trying to find a workaround solution because I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And I used AI, but like an even smarter AI to help guide my AI on the answer that I would then choose to then fix this problem. So I'm going to show you basically like the types of prompts that I was using, how I was talking to this new service with Bedrock, and how AWS, I think, is changing the game of LLMs and why you should pay attention to this. So with that, I'm going to roll the video next, and we'll be able to dive into this exciting space of LLMs, AI, and prompting. So when we are in the chat text playground, this was the specific line that basically I needed to do. Now, why this is significant is because when I was prompting into all these different LLMs, I was trying Anthropic's Claude, I was trying basically ChatGPT 4.0, I was trying all of these different models. I was trying literally anything that I could get to work. And basically like nothing could basically help me figure it out. They were all basically trying to get me to install this, which is like the first step. And actually, if you scroll up a little bit, this is kind of like what it tries to, like all the LLMs basically try to do is like have you, install, Python this way with Brew. And this did actually work. And again, I'm going to talk about like why the way in which I loved how the Anthropic prompt router worked, because I did do this. I was able to validate that I could install 3.12 to work. But anyways, then it basically talks about, trying to do this, like this won't work because of, blah, blah. You can try to install it this way, and then without TCL TK, and then PyEnv install this. And then also Brews, every LLM talked about this and this. Also, every LLM talked about this as a strategy. But then no LLM that I was talking to was talking about doing this. yes, in a sense, like you would technically need to like reinstall this, but what I ended up thinking about was, can I install or uninstall this specific package, try to then install Python, and then maybe try to reinstall this later as I need to. And that was the key point that helped me solve this one huge problem, because this specific package is incompatible with the newer versions of Python, but it was a dependency that was required for 3.8, which is that version of Python that I have on my machine, and also probably 3.10. But I needed to uninstall this, and you'll see in the terminal that it was tethered basically to these previous versions. But this prompt router using Anthropic from Amazon Bedrock helped me see that if I can uninstall this, I can then try to use PyEnv and install it. That then maybe possibly could be a solution. And that ended up being the solution. So I'm going to go through basically how I was talking to Amazon Bedrock with Prompt Router and show you basically all the prompts that I needed to go through to basically figure out this solution. So the specific issue that I was facing here was when I tried to install the new version of Python, I wasn't able to do that. So here I was, checking out the PyEnv versions. So PyEnv versions is how you can check to see which versions of Python are installed on your operating system. So I had 3.8 and two different versions of 3.10. So those were mainly the Python versions that I use regularly, just because those are usually the most maintained, and usually those are the ones that just work. But I needed to install 3.12.2. So when I was trying to get this specific set of versions for 3.12, nothing came up because I hadn't installed it. So I was trying to check to see which the version was of Python on my machine, and it was set to be 3.10.8. So I was going to need to find a way to basically install the 3.12.2 version. So as any developer would think, what I then wanted to do was go to use PyEnv and then do PyEnv install 3.12.2, which is what you would do if you have installed Homebrew, you are on a Mac, and you want to install this in the easiest way possible, which you do PyEnv install 3.12.2. So what it'll basically do is it will get the tar module configuration for Python. It will then get this from python.org, and then it'll start installing that specific version. And 3.12.2 is a version that is maintained by Python Institute, and they manage basically the maintenance of this so that we're able to download it. So then what I saw was that it was going to use Python build, which is out of Homebrew. It's going to use OpenSSL and readline to then basically get the tar version, and then it will be able to then get that tar.xz location, and then it's going to use Python build to use the tcl/tk, readline, and zlib from Xcode SDK. So some stuff from Homebrew, some stuff from Xcode on our Mac, but then we're going to be ready to rock. So then I got this build failed error where it'll say build failed OS 15.2 using Python build, and then it's a specific number. So if you go on Stack Overflow, you'll see a bunch of people that have also had this same issue, and some people say that it's a Homebrew issue, some people say that it is a Mac OS issue, some people say that it's an Xcode issue, and different things worked for different people, but those are also from a couple of years ago. So it wasn't really helpful. I tried all the different things, but it wouldn't work. But the one thing that I did notice was that there was something up with this tcl/tk package, and it talked about the TCL size. It talked about something being incompatible pointer types. It talked about parameter. Talked about TCL size, modules, tk, integer. And then it talked about a whole bunch of other things. So I was really getting confused because it was also talking about the command line tools here. It's talking about Homebrew, it's talking about read lines. So if you scroll up a little bit, you can sort of see that it was, complaining about this SDK, talking about, Mac OS SDK. It was talking about, yeah, you see that also here, a whole bunch of different problems. And then I'm sort of seeing about this TCL size. I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's related to TCL this. But yeah, anyways, it was not working out. So what I then tried to do was go up here. So this is a little bit, I'm skipping around a little bit, but one of the things that I needed to do was that I hadn't agreed to the Xcode license. So you need to agree to the Xcode license because I had upgraded, or I needed to upgrade my Mac to Sequoia, which is the new version of the Mac OS, and that also has Apple Intelligence and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I figured that might help me with upgrading the Xcode. So install the dev tools or the Xcode command line interface tools, and then validated that those all worked because I got Xcode select install, and then that all worked. So then when I tried to really do the installation for this, it didn't work. And then I also tried to uninstall the TCLTK and then reinstall this because that's what was recommended by ChatGPT 4.0. So then I did that, and then I tried to install that, and it just really wasn't working out. And I kept trying to install it and all these things, and then try to reinstall TCLTK, and then it just did not work. So then what I want to then show is where this prompting comes into play. So when you are logged into the AWS console, you're going to go to Bedrock, which you can just type in the search bar and then go to the Amazon Bedrock service. But how this is going to work is that there's kind of two flavors to routers right now. So you're either going to choose the Anthropic path or the Meta path. And these are the two routes that are available right now. This is literally in preview, so this just got launched. But you can choose between the Claude models or the Llama models. And I'm a little bit more familiar with Claude from like an LLM perspective, but in terms of deploying these types of models, I've used Llama's models more. But both are great. Both are extremely powerful, and you can really pick whichever one you want. You will just need to make sure that in the model catalog, which is up here on the left, you're going to need to make sure that you have access to these specific models if you're going to use a route, because it can route between all these different types of models, but you need to have access to those models for it to be able to route between them. So just make sure that you go to the model catalog and then you request the models. I also have another YouTube video where I explain how to request models from the model catalog, so definitely check that out if you haven't checked that out already. But then once you select your adventure, you're then going to be able to basically choose the route, and then you talk to the route, and then Bedrock behind the scenes will decide which types of models from either family it will pick from. So that's pretty great. And then you can also use this in production. So you can also just save effort on tests and create complex orchestration workloads. You can use the invoke and converse API operations to incorporate routers into your generative AI apps. So this isn't something that just needs to stay in the console. This also can work really in your workloads, in your company's applications, in your startups projects, in your own personal workloads, anything that you need basically calling an LLM, you can instead call a route and then work with this dynamic model switching pattern to choose the best possible model for your specific use case, which it's just wild. We're living in amazing times. So it's incredible that there's technology like this that exists. So we're going to be able to dive into this. So I'm going to choose the Anthropic model route, which is this one. We'll then choose open in playground. And then this is where we're going to be able to open up a playground to be able to start prompting our LLM. So to take this from the top, what I specifically asked the Anthropic prompt router was saying that I can't switch to this version of Python. And then I included the log output that I got, which was all of this. So I included that there. Also talked about how the build had failed. And then I said, can you help me figure this out? I have already upgraded my Mac OS M1 to Sequoia, and I upgraded the command line Xcode build tools. So, really trying to construct my prompt where I'm basically saying, here's the problem, here's a whole bunch of context, basically examples of what I'm facing, and then this is the specific call to action, which is, can you help me figure this out with more context? Now, it said, based on the error log, it seems the issue is related to the TCLTK library, which it was, and this is used for GUI support in Python. So it gave me some examples of things to try. So updating brew, which I had already done, brew upgrade, I had already done, but I still did it. I talked about reinstalling TCLTK, uninstalling, and then installing. And what I ended up even thinking about this, so I did uninstall and then reinstall it, but I needed to actually switch out basically this order, but I didn't know that at the time. So I had basically uninstalled it and then reinstalled it, which isn't here. In here somewhere. Try to expand this out a little bit. Yeah, sometimes these terminal windows are hard to read. So I had tried to install it here. I got the Python version. Yeah, so I had tried to uninstall. Yeah, here we go. So this was where I tried to uninstall it. Now, this is where it refused to do this because it was required by Python 3.8, which is currently installed. So I thought that this was interesting because when I tried to basically, because I thought that I had uninstalled it, but then I need to reinstall it, and I actually had not. So that's where I really needed to uninstall this. And the reason why was because this TCLTK package somehow is dependent on use in 3.8 and probably 3.10. So I thought that I had uninstalled it at the time, but I did not. So then I kept trying to then go pyev install, and then it did not work. So then, error, dot, dot, dot. So then I tried to upgrade TCLTK, right? Because it's talking about, installing and upgrading. And then basically I tried to uninstall it, and then that did not work. I tried to install it again, and then I was able to install it. And then, yeah, so that's kind of where that laid off. So then I tried also these other things where I tried to use like these export flags and configure ops. So I tried to do like all these different things. Let's see if I could try to find one. Yeah, this was a long day. Yeah, where's a good example of that script? Yeah, here we go. This is a good one. Okay. So I tried to do that configure ops, and then it was without TCL/TK, pyev install this, and then that also failed. So that wasn't working. Then, yeah, so I was trying to do all these different things. So I said, what if I were to uninstall Homebrew and reinstall? Because I'm just sort of thinking, would this make a difference? So we talked about it could be a good way to resolve persistent issues. You know, like basically if you think the problems are related to Homebrew, but it didn't really think that Homebrew was the issue here. It wasn't like necessarily saying I should try this. So this was the process to do this, but then I was a little bit worried about if I have a bash and CSH profile, would removing Homebrew affect those files? So then it talked about it won't directly modify your bash profile or your ZSHRC file or other shell configurations, but It talked about how you would need to do path modifications, and then you need to do manual cleanup, and also you would need to remove these things, and then brew installed software. Basically, those configurations that would remain and need to be removed manually. And I was thinking, okay, this is probably way more work than it needs to be. There has to be an easier solution. So then I basically said, what should I do about this? So I had tried to uninstall the TCL/TK package. It talked about basically it's refusing it, and then it talked about the error message indicates it's dependent on Python this. So that's where what I needed to then go and do was I needed to uninstall that version of Python, which let's see where that happened. There we go. Okay. So a lot of house. So I tried to uninstall the Python 3.8 version, and then it uninstalled it, and then all that type of stuff. So then what I tried to do was then uninstall the TCL/TK, and then it was able to uninstall that. So then I said brew upgrade TLC/TK, of course, because now that means that I wouldn't be able to upgrade it because it doesn't exist. So I was able to check that. So then I tried to install it again. I was able to install it, all that stuff, right? Which I thought would do. And then, you could like install or basically uninstall this, which is what I tried to do. And then I then, of course, thought that I needed to reinstall it, which is where I did that. Yeah, install here. So then I tried to then do env install 3.12.2, and then I got a bill fail again. So talked about, I said I uninstalled this, I reinstalled it, 3.8 is removed from Python, tried to install this again. I basically passed in all of this information, all this stuff, all this good stuff. So it says, it seems the issue persists even after reinstalling TCL/TK. The error is related to incompatible pointer types in the TCL/TK headers. So what it then suggested was making sure that Xcode, the Xcode command line tools were installed correctly. I'm trying to export some features, which I did do, which is like you'll see here. I tried to export all of these things. I then tried to use the Python configure opt like this. When we need to disable the support for that. And then I noticed that this executed like much faster when I was trying to install the this Python version this way, but then it still failed and it gave a very similar output response. And then, yeah, I kind of just passed it in and was asking, and it goes, I apologize for the confusion. It seems the command didn't work as expected due to the variables. So it says, let's see about the TCL/TK paths correctly. So then I tried to, basically redo this again. Yeah, I tried to do this again with exports, and that still did not work. So I tried all the approaches and not getting anywhere. Basically, I tried to like throw all this in again. Basically trying to do like a last-ditch effort to see basically like what can I do to fix this. So then Anthropic goes, I apologize for the continued difficulties. It seems that the issue persists despite our attempts. Let's try a different approach. So this was where I kind of started dialing in on what it was suggesting again. So again, I had already upgraded Brew. I had already done these things. You can try the patch here. Is there an alternative to PyNV? I started thinking about, can we do other things? So that was where I did start thinking about, can I install this via Homebrew? So I did start thinking about what are the different versions of 3.12. I noticed that there was 3.12.8. So then I thought about, if I tried to install this via Homebrew, what would that look like, as opposed to just trying to do PyNV again. So again, I kept trying. So I made sure to update Brew. Then what I did was I made sure to try to install Python this way. So Brew install Python 3.12, and then it was able to then start installing this version of Python via Brew. Then what I was able to do was then validate that this had installed correctly, because it was able to install into the seller, and then we got 3.12.8. Now notice that this is not 3.12.2, this is 3.8. This is like the latest version that Homebrew has. So then I tried to think about, okay, if I could install it this way, because we were able to get it to work, can I install this via PyNV and install that? And I was not, yet again. So still getting the same issue, same thing with TCL, same thing with the TCL size. It just seemed like it just would not work. So then basically the Amazon Bedrock was giving me all these different examples of things to do. So it's like, if we use Homebrew, we can install Homebrew this way. So that's how I was able to find out how to install this via Homebrew. But then it talked about how you need to have the path and everything. But I just wanted to validate that I could install this on my computer, which I was able to. So then it made me think, okay, it's not a Mac issue. It's not necessarily a Homebrew issue. There has to be something about this other package. So then it talked about all this stuff. So I was basically asking it that I was able to install it. It goes great. 3.12 has been successfully installed. Now I have a few options here, which I can do. So then I asked it about my ZSH file and basically just gave it some information. So it noted that 3.12 was there, but that's with Homebrew, that's not with PyEnv. So then I kept going, and then I said that the version is 3.12.8. So I noticed that Homebrew did not install 3.12.2, it just installed 3.12.8. So that's where Homebrew doesn't have 3.12.2. It has 3.12.8, which is the latest version. So then I started thinking about, okay, like, can you use PyEnv install? Can you do these other ones? And basically I'm trying to understand, why can't I get 3.12.2? And that was my prompt to Amazon Bedrock. It goes, thanks for giving some extra context. So it then explained that, because Brew only has 3.12.8, it's not 3.12.2. Python has that. So I would need to use PyEnv to install that specific version. And it had cut off. So then I just said continue. And then it was, configuring this type of stuff. So then I really focused in on this part of it, where it talked about Brew uninstall TCLTK. And I was thinking, is that the package that, of course, was dependent for Python, the 8 and the 10 version, but if I remove these, will this help me? So what I ended up trying to do was, I kept getting fail after fail after fail, but then, I do Brew uninstall TCLTK. I then uninstalled that. Then what I tried to do was PyEnv install 3.12.2, and as luck would have it, this finally worked. And I assume that this is because this specific version of this package, the TCLTK, that must have been specific for older versions of Python, but now in the newer versions of Python, perhaps the Mac OS or the build tools or these other types of systems abstract the complexity away so that package isn't needed, but it will cause issues if it's directly installed and then you try to install this newer version of Python. So once I had uninstalled this, then I was able to then install this specific version. It then used OpenSSL, it used readline, it downloaded the tar.xz module here, and then it started installing the specific version of Python I wanted. And then I was able to use readline, zlib from Xcode SDK and Homebrew, and then it installed the specific version I needed, which was 3.12.2. And then when I checked PyEnv versions, I needed to do PyEnv versions like this, and then I got 3.8, 3.10, 3.10, and 3.12. So that was awesome because now I was able to validate that that actually worked. So it was this specific step after talking to the Anthropic prompt router for a bit to give it a whole bunch of context about what was going on in and around my issue. And that's where I was able to like make me think, okay, if I uninstall this and I try to install this again, will that help me get around this issue? And it turns out that it fixed it, which was amazing, like so cool. And then that was literally the last couple of prompts that I was asking it. I was also just asking it about PyEnv in general, but this was awesome because this was able to finally fix my issue with being able to switch out all these things. And none of the LLMs were able to fix this for me, but I do think that the power of being able to just talk to a prompt router and not need to think about which model am I thinking about, which company am I using, being able to just have the LLM know this is the exact prompt that you want. This is the exact model that's optimized for this prompt. This is the type of optimization that you want for this specific type of question. So I think that's amazing that Amazon Bedrock now has this functionality with prompt routing inside of AWS. So once you have an access to AWS, you can then use Amazon Bedrock. You subscribe to all the different models that you would need for the routing pattern, and then now it will just decide which of the models it needs. So this specific Anthropic router was able to then help me see that I needed to do this and then need to do this, and then helped me get started working with 3.12.2, which is, again, amazing. Literally, I'm like so happy that this is a feature that people can use because I think this will save people so much time and guesswork and also allow people to iterate so quickly, especially if you're dealing with really complicated issues like this where the documentation is very sparse about how to fix this. Having an LLM that's supercharged with these types of superpowers helps me make sure that I'm not using like a hugely expensive model when I don't need to, but also that I'm not using a super small, underutilized, underleveraged model when I need something that's way more complicated. So amazing. We love when the technology just works. So great. I hope that this video was helpful in illuminating this really cool feature for Amazon Bedrock so that you can supercharge your prompts and make sure that you're getting the best possible model for your types of prompts. And I definitely highly recommend you to at least test this out and check it out. It's one of those things where once you see it, you start thinking, wait, why would I be paying for all these different types of subscriptions? It brings me back to thinking when you have all these different streaming platforms, right? So, you need Netflix, but then you also need Hulu, and then you also need HBO Max, and then you also need, Disney Plus, and then you also need Amazon Video, Prime, and all these different things. And it's, you could have like all these different subscriptions. So now you might think, okay, $20 a month for ChatGPT, and then $20 a month for Claude, and then $20 a month for Perplexity. And then you start thinking about like all these, and then, there's like there's all these different other LLM platforms, and they all, offer certain things. Some have only a few models, some have many different types of models. And then I start thinking about this of like, why wouldn't you just go to just one specific place and have it know that you're going to get the best possible models, but then it's basically deciding, do you need the most expensive model or the fastest and the cheapest one, depending on the question that you ask. So I think that's amazing because then it takes all the guesswork out of making sure that you choose the right platform and you choose the right subscription. And then maybe there's a certain point where you need to like unsubscribe from one platform to resubscribe to another one to, save costs and all these types of things. So what if you could just go to so it makes me think about like, what if you could just go to one specific place and know you're going to get the best possible stretch of your dollar for the best possible value of your LLM outputs. So I think that's pretty awesome. I'm super excited and jazzed about this. This also really worked. Like I needed to film this YouTube video today because I wanted to make sure that I could capture everything and just be in the mindset of sharing this moment with you all, but also showing you that like you can supercharge your prompts as well and to just not feel like you need to be beholden to a specific company. Also, like today, like no shade, but like ChatGPT went down. And it went down like while I was actually working on this specific issue. So it was actually funny because I had started using prompt routers like before ChatGPT went down. But if you think about it, like if you're beholden to like a specific provider and then that provider goes down, like what are you gonna do? Like you know you're stuck. So thinking about this of like if you could just have all of these different LLMs at your disposal whenever you need them, and also you can just always know that they're going to be on and available. Again, superpowers. Again, we're never beholden to a single platform or a single company. We can then switch between all these different models, these different providers. Maybe we want to use Anthropic. Maybe we want to use Meta. We could switch between them at will. So again, I hope this video is really helpful for you. I'm really excited about this feature, and I'm really excited to see if you end up using this feature as well. I posted this on social media, and this got a lot of really good feedback. So I'm hoping to hear from you all as well. What types of prompts you're sending to Prompt Router? Are you using Prompt Router at all? Are you actually using that for yourself? Are you using that in production? I'm really excited to see what you're building. So with that, I hope that this video finds you well. And thanks again for checking out the Tech Stack Playbook, your guide to apps, software, and tech, but in a fun way, I promise. I'll catch y'all later. Bye.